What if the secret to scaling a business is not answering faster, working later, or being available every moment of the day? My guest today, Ari Pirutinsky, has built his career in a field where urgency is everywhere: paid media, client results, attribution, data, revenue, and growth. He's the founder and CEO of Steady Growth Partners, a firm focused on sustainable growth through paid search, paid social, performance creative, and better attribution systems. But what makes Ari especially interesting is not just that he understands growth, it's that he's built his business around the idea that growth should be steady, intentional, and sustainable, not chaotic, frantic, or all-consuming. He's helped scale an agency from 2 people to nearly 70, worked with demanding B2B, business-to-business clients, and developed a clear philosophy around client trust, proactive communication, and building cultures where mistakes become learning opportunities rather than lessons to fear. And through all that, Ari has been intentional about protecting the things that matter most: family, faith, and boundaries. So today we're going to talk about growth, but not the reckless kind. We're going to talk about scaling a business without losing yourself in the process. And it all begins right now. Stick around. Ari, welcome to the show. I'm excited to have this conversation today.
Thanks for having me on, Mike. I am as well.
Awesome. So Ari, let's get back into our Wayback Machine, kind of go back in time. Before we get into paid media and agency growth and all that stuff, what were you doing before Steady Growth Partners, and what first pulled you into the agency world? Anyway, what made you, contemplate leaving the perceived security of where someone else has to make sure the check clears the bank, the payroll check clears the bank, and you don't have to worry about it? What made you leave that on the table and pursue entrepreneurship?
Yeah, it's a great question. I'd love to give some sort of rosy answer around it was just a fire that continued to burn in me. But truthfully, I wanted to own my time. I wanted to own my time, and the idea that we live once, and you only live once, and that was popular as a hashtag a while ago, to me doesn't mean to take reckless risks, but means to me to look at your life and say, we only have one. What am I going to do to design it in the way that I can live it for me and for what I feel is important and my values and my family? And ultimately, the answer, there really was only one answer, which is I have to figure out a way that I can own my time, because that is what is the most precious asset we all have. And that's where I looked at the opportunity to say, okay, well, entrepreneurship really, to me, yes, it's a risk. But that is where I'm going to find the balance of being able to make earn a living that I felt was enough to be able to design my life and also have the time to enjoy it. And that's really what pushed me into entrepreneurship. There were a couple of false starts, different business ideas, but ultimately the experience that I had working at other agencies, and quite frankly, speaking with so many other business owners, that I kept hanging up the phone with and thinking, I can do that. I can do that. I can do that, and I can do that better, and I can do that my way. And that's what pushed me into it, really.
Interesting. There are probably some of my audience that are watching or listening to this right now that are in the beginning stages of their entrepreneurial journey. And they're hearing you say, I wanted to start my own business so I can control my own time. And they're probably driving off the road right now.
I think I know where this question is going.
Yeah. So, we all talk about, the entire world talks about work-life balance. That's kind of the buzzword for today. And people think balance is 50-50. In this case, it doesn't seem to be. But when you first start a business, many entrepreneurs, maybe you're the unicorn in the crowd, but many entrepreneurs, when you first start a business, it is all consuming. It's an investment. You're pouring in time and energy, blood, sweat, tears, money, all of that for a return in the future. And the return is, an ROI, both financially and personally, and quality of life type, KPIs. And, if it's done right, it does come back to you, and you can own your time. Clearly, I own my time, but I didn't own it early on, or if I did own it, I chose to put 100% of it into the business for a while. And I view that as like high octane starter fluid down the carburetor, for the grease monkeys that are out there. Does that make sense? Did you start the agency and on day one able to dictate what's your time, what's its time, or did that come back as a return on the investment?
I think you really nailed the progression of how you really should think about entrepreneurship. And the way I think about owning my time is that's the ultimate goal. So there has to be an investment early on. For the most part, there has to be an investment early on, and I understood that. But I always try to ask this question: what is the alternative? What's the alternative? And to me, there didn't seem to be any. There didn't seem to be an alternative where I can confidently look ahead 3, 5, 10, 15, 20 years even and say, I'm on the path that will ultimately get me where I want to be. But we still have to live rooted in reality. And that means you have to invest early on. And I mean, there's nothing different if you take the approach, and there's nothing wrong with taking the approach of a career and the approach where you're going to be an employee. And even if that's a really high pressure, finance, law, accounting, whatever that might be, there's going to be some sort of investment upfront to make your
mark,
your mark in whatever, in whatever business you're in, whatever job you're in. So I looked at that and said, why don't I do everything I possibly can while my family is young, where I still have energy, where I'm young, invest early on. And absolutely, I mean, I started the business with a full-time job. So I had a full-time 40-hour-a-week job. I was servicing clients on the side for another probably 30 hours. So absolutely not, Mike. I did not own my time at all. I actually went from one boss, which was the CEO of the previous agency I was working at, to 20 bosses, which is all my clients. So I looked at that and said, like, okay, this is obviously not where I want to be, but I saw a path. I saw a path that had to start there for me to ultimately say, okay, I can see where this can go, and where this can go is where I want to go. And that's really how I thought about it. But you always have to ask the question, what's the alternative? It might feel nice and comfortable now to check out on Friday at 5 o'clock and be done until Monday morning. But how long does that comfortable state last, where that uncomfortability that comes from the outside of it starts to make you shift and turn the wheel a little bit? So that's how I thought about it.
Yeah, you said something there that made me laugh, because I say this all the time. People romanticize entrepreneurship. They think, oh, you're so lucky, Ari. You get, you're your own boss, and they come up with 10 other fallacies. And to your point that, you have 20 clients who are all your boss. I think that's just the least of it. You've got, I like to envision it as a pyramid turned upside down. So the pointy end is on the ground. You are down there in the little pointy end, right? Everything above you report to. So that's every customer, every vendor, the government, the economy, the weather. You are the bottom of the food chain, right? In terms of who you report to. Other than, compare that to working a 9 to 5, so to speak, where you've got one person you report to directly. They have one person they report to directly. It's very hierarchical. But in the world of entrepreneurship, man, you are responsible for everything, whether you have control over it or not.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I fantasize sometimes about being in a 9 to 5.
Oh, we all do.
when things are tough, it's like, man, can I just send an out of office email and be done with this?
Yeah.
but that's not really how it works. And you mentioned luck. Yes, there's luck. There's luck involved in everything for sure, but there's just so much work that goes into it.
Yeah.
And I
When
think
I
like
say luck, it's
even
almost just like a metaphor. It's not luck. You are absolutely. I'm glad
it's
you
not. It's
pointed that
not.
out because it's not luck.
It's not. I'll tell you, Mike.
It's
Last night I was watching. We're right now. I don't know when this will be released, but right now we're in middle of the NBA Finals, and last night was the first game at Madison Square Garden. The walk-in ticket just to get into the stadium was over 10K, and I'm watching the game with my 8-year-old daughter, and she's looking at this packed house, and she turns to me. She's like, "Dad, man, everyone sitting in that stadium is so lucky." And obviously, I took that as an opportunity to
yeah.
teach a
There you
little bit
go.
about the role of luck. But those people, outside of the trust fund babies, but everyone else,
Right.
worked really hard. Well, and the truth is, someone along the line somewhere worked incredibly hard for
Yeah.
everyone to be there. Um, and yeah, I mean that concept around luck for sure plays a big piece, but there's so many other factors that lead into what designs and what creates the life that you have.
Yeah. Your new mayor was on the news yesterday, saying that he went to that game, but he was in the $1,000 section, which is standing room only section, and so
I'm not sure if this is a politics show, but
well,
we
I
can
no,
we can keep
well,
talking.
we could talk. Oh, we could definitely go down that rabbit hole. I've learned one thing in business. Yeah, we all have political conversations, in the bar, and but on air, it. I think businesses that take political stands and fall on a sword, as righteous as that might be, are going to take people who already agree with them and not gain any support, and take people who disagree with them and lose support. It's a net negative. And I think I'm not saying we should not have political beliefs or religious beliefs or stances on them, but I like to keep those rather separate, just because I know that it's just diminishing returns. And
I mean,
I'm the
it's the
first.
algorithm's fault.
Well, it totally, 100%.
It's an echo
We
chamber.
can
We live in an echo chamber world.
100%. And if I search one thing, that's all I see now for the next 6 months. Right? It's like, nah, it was a fluke search. Anyway, we can go down those rabbit holes and we can talk forever on that. You helped scale an agency from 2 people to nearly 70, which is pretty impressive. What did that experience teach you about growth that most entrepreneurs only learn about the hard way? Or maybe you did learn about it the hard way, but what are the lessons you took out from that scaling that process?
Yeah, it's funny, and just to clarify, the agency where I was the second employee and then grew to what that ultimately became 70 employees and 3 offices, that was not mine. I didn't own that agency, but I really learned everything that I know now in that position and took a tremendous amount of that into how I operate today and how I think about things today. And I would say the number one biggest component of what drove success there was the environment to fail. It was the environment to try and test and push your own limits, knowing that there was a team that was supportive around you, that was okay with a fail, was okay with a mistake, as long as there was a learning that came out of it, and that mistake doesn't happen twice, or the same mistake doesn't happen twice. And it was so eye-opening to me because every other position that I had, I always felt this like bubbling underneath expectation of I have to know how to do everything that I've been hired to do. And if I don't know how to do what I've been hired to do, whether that's in marketing or operations or sales, I have to figure out how to do that outside of the resources inside the company and then bring it to the company and deliver on it. Otherwise, my job is in question, my capabilities are in question. And the idea that this entire business was built on just trying, it was so refreshing, to the point where we used to joke that the motto of the team, or the motto of the agency, was say yes and read the book after. And that was the idea of really collaborating. And it even like it built the culture to a point where it lent itself to creating a internal learning day for the agency themselves on here. Everyone had an opportunity to present whatever they'd like on tests that they ran, whether they worked or not, on interesting campaigns that they tried or interesting tools that they've used. And there was such a camaraderie that was built from that. You felt free to do. And I feel like that is such a blocker in a lot of positions. And as an entrepreneur, if you're building something from the ground up, I can't stress how important it is to build it on the foundation of support and the foundation of allowing your people to swing big, knowing that if they miss, they're still going to be able to share the learnings from it. And it's going to make everyone, including themselves, better. I mean, man, what a way to build a company.
Yeah, I'm a big believer that we learn more from failure than success. I've been successful at things in spite of what I did, not because of what I did, right? And so you never really know if you can take a lesson from a success and apply it in the future, because it may have just been destined to be successful. The idea was so good that even I couldn't screw that up. Failure, on the other hand, is a direct result in most cases of the idea and the person with the idea. So if I were interviewing someone, two people tomorrow, and someone owned a business and had 3 successful businesses in a row, and the other person competing for the same job had a failure followed by a success, I would 100% of the time go for that person, the failure.
Oh, I like that.
Because I could go to Vegas or Atlantic City or wherever, and I can sit at a roulette table for 3 games in a row and win all 3. Does that mean I'm good? Roulette's a game of chance. It's not like poker or blackjack that has some degree of strategy. It's a game of 100% of chance. If I win 3 games in a row, am I good or am I lucky? Well, I would say lucky. So I would. The fact that someone had 3 hits in a row doesn't mean, there's 3 more coming. It could. I need more data. If someone had a failure, learn from it, and then turn that into a future success, that's a lesson they're going to keep exercising. So I totally value failure. I hate it. It doesn't feel good. It hurts. But the lessons coming out are invaluable. You just purchased a lesson, right? You just purchased a credential. You're not going to do that again. Most of us won't do that again.
Yeah, can I ask you a question, Mike? Since you have so much experience in business, you've been doing this for a really long time. And on the topic of failure, at the point when you're low or you go through that failure, what is it that allows you to keep moving or keep going or summon the strength to get to that next point where you can succeed? Because I've always found the mindset, the psychological component of being an entrepreneur is by far the toughest. And we all know consistency beats intensity, but it's easy to say that and it sounds great. And it's a great tweet, but how do you actually put that into practice? And what have you found works?
A mentor once told me just a few basic words.
A mentor, I guess.
A person. Yes, yeah. Having a mentor, number one. And this mentor taught me to make peace with the worst. So I have a decision I have to make. You need to go left or right. She told me 2 things. You either need to go left or right. Well, I'm afraid to make the decision. So, fear-based decisions or not making decisions based on fear can be paralyzing. And every entrepreneur goes through that. And because you don't want to fail. And so if you're not making a decision because you're afraid of failure, make peace with the worst. So you're thinking of doing something. You're going to take your business in a different strategy. You're going to bring on a different type of client, whatever the case may be. And you're just hesitating because you're afraid to do it, I would ask you, Ari, what's the worst that can happen? What is the absolute worst thing? First of all, will it kill you? Physically kill you? Will your heart stop? Well, no, Mike, that's silly. No, it's not going to kill me. Okay, so you're safe, your family's safe, fine. Will it instantly kill your business? Is this a death sentence for your business if you're wrong? Is it all or nothing? Well, no. Well, what's the worst that can happen? Well, we'll lose some money, we'll lose some credibility, we might lose a couple clients. Okay, all right. Is that all you got? Is that the worst? Well, that's the absolute worst case. Okay, make peace with that. I mean, do everything you can to avoid it. But if it happens, you knew that was a possibility, and learn from it. Ready, aim, fire. Just calibrate, recalibrate, try it again if it's appropriate. And once that was said to me in a manner that I could actually digest it, I'm like, yeah, you're right. I mean, I'm making mountains out of molehills, right? And in my head. The other thing is, we look at decisions through the lens of time and money. And let's go back to that intersection analogy. We need to go left or we need to go right. That's a decision the company has to make. Well, what's the right decision? Well, I mean, I can't afford to go right. I want to go right, but I don't have enough money or time. Well, what if you had all the money and the time? Well, duh. If I had all the money and the time, if Elon came to me and just gave me $1 billion or Bezos, I'd go right. Okay, stop right there. That's the right decision. Let's just agree. The decision is we're going to go right. Yeah, but no, stop, no buts. The decision is we're going to go right. Okay, that's the decision. But I can't do it unless I have the time and money. Okay, go out and look for the time and money. We will never find the time and money if we don't make the decision first. We almost manifest the time and money. Once we've made the decision, we are going right, you'll start working at ways to solve, the monetary and the time constraints. If we make a decision to go left because we can't afford the time or the money, it'll always be the wrong decision. So anyway, those are the things that have helped me. Long answer to your short question.
No, I love it. And I think that what I took away from that is you need to mentally prepare. And you need to mentally prepare before there's some sort of pivotal decision or there's some sort of pivotal move. And laying the foundation there really allows you to have that cushion if you fall mentally and psychologically to say, I have enough confidence in myself that I will figure out ways to succeed, which means that if this goes wrong, I'm good. I'm still good. This didn't work, but something else will, and I'll continue to move and pick up speed and pick up other ideas and opportunities. I know just personally, every growth bump that I've had along the way in my entrepreneurial journey has come after a very low point. That kind of shook me a little bit to say, okay, why did that happen? What do I need to do to get to the next level? And the next time, or really thinking between each low, because there is just always going to be bad days, bad months, bad quarters. But what do I do between now and then to actually prepare so that low isn't as low? And I think that is something that does become very powerful. And I think one component that I now have to start adding to that is the psychological component of a low is just it's temporary. Prepare for when that might happen, and don't let it affect the self-confidence that you've built over all those wins. So I love that. I appreciate that perspective and that response.
Yeah, we find ourselves in this world of entrepreneurship battling a lot of mind games, right? Because it attacks our ego, it attacks our sense of self-worth. We armchair quarterback ourselves, we're sitting on our shoulders going, you're so stupid, Mike, you're so whatever. I spent a lot of years thinking I was a pretty bright person. I'm in the tech world. I designed all the tech that we sell even today. I didn't know anything about business, but I'm thinking, well, I'm going to start this business. How hard could it be, Ari? I mean, anyone can figure out business. I got the hard stuff down. I didn't know anything about business, and it showed. And I spent a lot of years almost in a certain amount of shame because of all the stupid mistakes I made, and I almost completely messed up our family finances many, many times. I put our financial future at risk, in some cases needlessly, the way I was looking at it then. And then with some altitude and perspective, I look back and I realize, wait a minute, this was all some giant curriculum that I don't remember signing up for. It's like a PhD course in entrepreneurship and business, and there's no frat parties or sorority girls or brick and mortar buildings, but it's an education, and I think it's a lot like the military. And when you join the military, you go into boot camp, and the drill sergeant's role is to break you and then rebuild you into the soldier you need to be. And I think business is very similar. Business is, all right, Ari, welcome to the business corps, right? And it's going to break you if it needs to, and rebuild you through lessons and through failures and through some successes and through things like that. And I think if we look at it that way, that it's going to be difficult, but it's going to turn you into someone with mastery, business mastery. You went in naive. I went in naive. Everyone does. But you come out with mastery on it. And it changes your life. It changes everything about you. And it turns you into the business master that you are becoming. And I think if we look at it as curriculum, and if you go to college, it's not meant to be easy. If you go into the military, it's not meant to be easy. Nothing worthwhile in life is. But I think if we look at it as, okay, I'm going to roll up my sleeves, I'm going to get knocked down a few times, and I'm going to learn from it and celebrate the failures just as much as the successes. And if you just have that expectation, it's less demoralizing. And now I look back and I celebrate the failures. I brag about them because I get together with a bunch of other business people that have been around a while, and we almost brag, hey, that was pretty stupid. Oh, I can trump that. It's like playing poker with a better hand of stupidity, right? But I think at some point, the lows just become just part of the terrain that you travel on this giant road trip of entrepreneurship. So you were working at another agency where you helped scale up a team. Was there a moment when you realized that in addition to wanting to ultimately build something that led to more, work-life balance where you can control your time, was there any time when you thought, I can build this differently? This agency's working, they're doing a good job, but I got some better ideas, or I got some ideas that maybe they're not embracing. Did you look at not only the work-life balance potential, did you also look at starting your own so that you can create maybe a slightly different vision of what an agency should be?
Yes and no. I do I do I think very highly of the previous agency. I'm actually still really close with them. I actually go work out of their offices almost weekly, just to keep in touch and be along for the ride. I think more so than the previous job within the agency, it was actually the exposure and experience that I had speaking to the clients. So on my first client call, I was so bad and I didn't know what to say. And I was so intimidated, you know, 10 years ago, that I remember this clearly. My boss and CEO was sitting right next to me, and the call was going so poorly that he just hung up in the middle of the call and picked the phone back up and apologized to the client and said, "Oh, I'm sorry, we're having some connectivity issues," and then just continued going through the reporting and the conversation and the presentation on his own with me kind of like sideline. And man, the feeling at that point was, I'm terrible at this. I'm never going to be able to, do this. And over time, as I got better and more comfortable, my confidence started building. And as I was trying to understand different business models, build out campaigns, present what we were doing, and as I got a little bit better and I started to gain more and more and more confidence, the lens shifted from this kind of scary, I'm talking to all these big businesses and these big, these CMOs of this brand that everyone knows, and the CEO, and presenting in a boardroom, and the lens shifted to everyone is just a person, and everyone is just learning on the job like I am, and we're all just trying to do our best. And it just continued to build this confidence in me to say, okay, I have had the exposure to build the confidence to look internally and say, what do I do with this confidence? What do I now do with it? And how do I use it to design the life that I want? How do I use it to take myself personally to the next level? So it wasn't a look internally in the job that I was in or the agency that I was in to say, I can do this so much better. For the record, I probably can. But I looked more so on the outside and the exposure. And you talked about education before. I don't think there is a better education than working at an agency where there's a high volume of clients that are really just like the agency itself is industry agnostic. So there was such a wide variety of business models that we had to really get into and understand. And it pulled back a layer that I don't think I would have been able to pull back in any kind of like other position. And it just put me in that seat to say, I can do this. I absolutely can do this. And then, of course, throughout the journey, I said, I can't do this. I definitely cannot do this. And then went back to, I can do this. So, and as it goes. But that's really what allowed me to take that leap, that confidence that I was able to build up.
Yeah, that's great. I think the fact that you work for an agency that's industry agnostic, that has a lot of different business types coming and going, is a huge benefit. You're getting a fly on the wall vision of all these other different business strategies without having to be in all those different business strategies. So a lot of entrepreneurs start by saying yes to everything. I did. Everything was a yes, right? Even if it should have been a no. Did you go through that phase? And if you did, what did it cost you?
Yeah, well, that's actually how I started, where as I built up a personal network, or as really my personal network started to get more familiar with my expertise and what I was good at on the marketing side, I started to like just field requests. Hey, I have a business and can I grab some of your time? Can you consult? And I would just kind of say yes to everything. And I, at a certain point, I was still doing full-time work at the agency. I had built up a bunch of clients on the side that I was personally consulting with, managing campaigns, online campaigns, and it was really across the board. It was very stressful. And it was at the time where I was looking at the time spent on side clients versus time spent in a 9 to 5 and trying to think of like, where do I go from here? Where I did jump full time into doing my own thing. And it became immediately way more stressful than the 9 to 5, of course. And that was what I was expecting. But what I wasn't expecting was now I had to monitor what I was saying yes to and no to because I didn't have any kind of support around me. It was just
Right.
me. And I started to get into that mindset to say, okay, I actually have to know what I'm really, really good at. And even more so, I have to know what I want to be really, really good at in this new capacity and in this new environment. And I, as much as revenue was king at that point, it always is. The one thing, and maybe this is even going back in the previous question, the one thing that I wanted to do different than where I came from and that agency and the position I was in was I did want to get more focused. I wanted to get more focused in the deliverables. I wanted to get more focused in what we felt really comfortable in delivering to a high level, as opposed to saying yes to all industries, to all types of services, to all types of deliverables. And I didn't make a conscious decision immediately on what that would be on that path, but I did make the conscious decision immediately to know that that is the next immediate goal. And I thought about it through the lens of client management, where there's a lot of chaos that happens in agency life. There's a lot of sales reps promising things that the team is not going to ultimately be able to deliver on. And
Yeah.
I, the way I thought about it was, if I can do a really good job at setting proper expectations and delivering on those expectations, we can build what I call trust equity. And if we can build trust equity, we can then own the script, and we can then dictate how the relationship builds out, and do that from a place of confidence. So that all came out of that thought, which is a great question. Okay, well, what do I focus on? Like, what are we good at, and what should we be good at? And that's how we started going down the path of getting very, very specific in the types of clients that we want to bring on, and why, and building offers around that, and building, processes internally that meet those deliverables. And it allows our team to talk from a place of confidence and own the client journey and relationship, and create pressure internally, as opposed to taking pressure constantly externally from clients, as far as like being able to deliver.
Yeah, I've learned a lot of seemingly in the moment counterintuitive things about business, and they sound, the ideas that have been suggested to me in the moment just sounded crazy, absurd, totally counterintuitive. But one of them is many times the word no is way more profitable than the word yes. And we were the same way. Of course, I think everyone is, kind of based on fear. We say yes to everything because we just never know if the next dollar's coming in, right? We need to cover payroll. And you only have so much bandwidth. You say yes to too many dumb things, and you can't do any real juicy things, that are way more profitable, or that, make the world a better place, or whatever. I also realize that now, I didn't at the time, that we are not just wallflowers at the dance. Pick me, dance with me, dance with me. That's how we were in the beginning, right? Like trying to look pretty and attractive, and so people would come to us. Today, we choose our clients as much as our clients choose us. And, when we are engaging in with potential clients, we're evaluating them, maybe even more than they're evaluating us, because working with the wrong client is toxic. It sucks up all your energy. The results land on all your other clients negatively, and you got to get to some level of confidence to know that it's okay to say no, right? It's scary, but it's okay to say no, because when you say no, you open yourself up for something better. And that was a hard lesson for me, man. That took a long time, because I'm a born salesman, right? That's my number one, thing is I love to sell. And, I love to say yes, and I hate to say no. And, once we got to the point where we just couldn't afford to say yes, then, I call it the burning building moment. We make an impactful decision, not because we've contemplated it and done a SWOT analysis on it and all that, but because the building was on fire. We had no choice. We had to jump. We just had to jump. So we didn't give it any thought. Most of my best decisions are burning building moments when there was no other choice, because the business gods have a way of just taking your options away. Okay, you're not listening now, Ari?
I love that.
We're going to take 3 options off the table, and this is going to be your only option.
I love that.
But yeah, go ahead.
I could tell you quick. I'll tell you a quick story on that, which is, as I was growing the agency, there was a point where I was talking to one of my mentors, and we were talking about, where are we now? Where are we now in the journey of being able to choose who we want as clients? And we were moving toward that, because ultimately, like, that was also one of the things that I wanted to own, which was, if I'm working at another agency or someone else is making decisions on what type of clients we're bringing on, we just have to kind of work with whoever was brought on. And early on, we were saying yes to everything. And we looked at the numbers, and we looked at the output, and we looked at the time that the team was putting into deliverables. And my mentor and I decided, okay, now's the time. We have to start moving toward picking the right type of clients that fit into the process that we have built out. And right as we started to move toward that, one of our biggest clients, their contract ended. They were bought by private equity. They brought in in-house, roll-up kind of agency. But we stuck with it. And I remember very clearly, one of the next sales calls that I had, one of the next pitches that I had, it wasn't the right fit. Even though I wanted to say yes, it wasn't the right fit. And I said to the prospect on the call, I said, you seem like a great guy, but you're the way your business is set up, the stage of the life cycle stage that you're in right now, it just doesn't fit with who we are.
Right.
And I was so nervous to say that. And it was very interesting, because immediately the prospect on the other side of the call leaned in and started to pitch me on why they are. They started to pitch me on why they are
the other way. Yeah.
Exactly. And there was like this psychological shift of like, oh wow, if I say no, that puts me in the power position. And the prospect, the lead, whatever it is, starts to get that feeling of, okay, this is a select agency. They have their process in place. They understand the value that they can deliver.
They're the ones saying, pick me.
Yeah. Exactly. I want in. It was such a crazy psychological shift that it immediately affirmed it was a correct decision. And it also informed how I approached the next, 3-4 years of doing sales since that happened. And it's just been really world changing, and I'll never turn back, and I'll always stick to what we're good at, why we're good at it, how we deliver, and making sure that we're really bringing on the right clients for us. And it's just, man, that was just such a powerful full shift in my, again, entrepreneurial brain, but the journey of learning. So I enjoyed that, and I remember it like it was yesterday.
If that's the only thing you learn in business, that's enough to keep you going. I mean, that is kind of the last thing I learned. And that is super valuable. Congratulations on discovering that.
Thank you. I would even say there were other
the building
learnings.
Being on fire, right?
Without the building, well, a couple of floors are on fire.
Floors. All right.
But I would say even from then, there were other learnings that came from that. Like I tell my team all the time, say I don't know to clients. Tell clients you don't know things.
Absolutely.
When you don't know things. Just tell them, because it breaks down the barrier of trust right away. I read this study that there was an experiment done by HR professionals around hiring, where there were two candidates that were brought in front of a hiring committee. One of them was absolutely perfect. The other one was terrible. But the second candidate, right at the beginning of their interview, spilled the cup of water in front of them and kind of acted a little bit flustered, and then regained composure. And okay, I think maybe I misspoke. Not terrible, just good enough.
Yeah,
and time and time again, that person was always chosen as the better candidate. And there's this psychological component to when something is too perfect, and when the hiring committee is looking at a candidate that's too perfect, they can't get past this idea of what's wrong. What is the thing that's
wrong?
Find
something.
And when and when you start the interview and you knock the cup over, okay, that was the thing that's wrong. He's flustered, she's flustered, they're not so smooth. All right, now I can relax and I can listen to the content that they're talking about. So it's a very interesting way of thinking around how do you connect with humans in an authentic way that you need to build a relationship with, a trust relationship with, because you're delivering marketing services with them. So it's not manipulating, it's actually building a real trusting relationship and creating the environment to say, I don't know.
Yeah, that's a really good point. You work with companies spending significant money on ads, but your message seems to be that ad spend alone doesn't solve the growth problem. What are most companies missing?
Most companies that I speak with, I I'm sure they're all great companies, but I think that one of the biggest challenges is they're not actually understanding what or how they should be thinking about their goals as it relates to marketing. So we're in marketing, we're a marketing agency, and we see it time and time and time again where a business or we'll talk to a prospect and we'll ask, all right, so we're running a marketing campaign, what's the goal here? And the response is, well, the goal is to generate a 700% return on ad spend. Okay. And then we start to dig in and ask questions around it. And so often the response becomes, the question is, well, why is that your goal? And the response is, well, that's because that's what our goal is. That's what we determine. And that's what we set as our goal. And we hear this so much that we always push and dig and say, okay, well, let's just take a step aside and understand unit economics. Let's understand volume versus value. Let's really dive in and figure out, like, what are the opportunities? Because if a business comes in to a conversation with a marketing agency, or they're even looking at their own marketing spend, and they have these goals around a certain return on ad spend or a certain volume of leads, you become boxed into what's available to you around strategy. But if you shift a little bit and you flip that and say, well, you want a 700% return on ad spend because that's what you determined is what you need to operate. Okay, but what about the actual money in the bank that you're bringing in from each one of these clients? And can we take a lower return on ad spend and increase the volume 300%? Okay, well, what's the net on that? And when you start to have these conversations, you start to hear like hemming and hawing of like, well, we haven't thought about that, and this is just what works. And that's also where you start to get a sense of, okay, who's flexible, what kind of, how are they going to approach their marketing? So it's a twofold kind of challenge, which is you have to really know your goals, but really understand why they're your goals. And then you have to understand, how are you tracking? How are you understanding and reading the data? How are you looking at the source of where the revenue is coming from? So ads is just a weapon of choice. It's just what you're using to accomplish the kill of the hunt. It's really about, what are you hunting? Why are you hunting that? And what kind of resources can you actually afford to put into that hunt? And I think, like, those questions, while they seem simple, there's such a high volume of decisions that are made in a business that sometimes those decisions are like made once by some executive level and never questioned. And I think that you should be questioning those all the time. And that's why sometimes when a partner comes in and has those questions, there's kind of blank stares, and it's very telling.
We've talked about trust and fear and things like that. And in my research on you, you've said that client trust is built before the moment of conflict, obviously not after the moment of conflict. What does that look like in practice? And yeah, let's just stop there right now. What does that look like in practice to build that trust before,
Yeah,
rather than
so
response to conflict?
it starts right at the first touch point when you speak to a lead or a prospect or someone that's interested in potentially working with you. It's a bunch of the components that we talked about previously. But when you start a conversation with a lead and you openly say, let's figure out if you're a good fit for our agency, and you're very honest and open, you start to go down the path of honesty and setting expectations. So we're very, very conscious of how we onboard clients and how we build out the process so that there's 100% transparency. So clients know what's coming next. We obviously have to really deliver on that. But then as we go, we are very conscious to set expectations at every single touch point that are conservative. Even if it's not something that the client wants to hear because they want to hit their goals quickly, we're very honest about what we can and can't do. And we're also very honest about when things go wrong. And when you start a relationship with a client, especially in the marketing agency space, very often, almost 100% of the time, at least when they're coming to us, we are not their first agency. So there's been experiences where they've been promised the world, they've been promised things, and it fell through, or they didn't feel like the agency met their expectations. And I mean, that's part of why we're having the conversation. So when you slow things down and when you under promise, and even when you under deliver, you are very open and honest about it. It's the same concept of you start to feel like that breathing on your neck like go away, because the client feels like we're the ones who are going to surface things that are missing the mark, or things that maybe we are missing deadlines on, or we're underperforming on campaigns. Not that that is our MO. I'm not here to undersell our agency. We do good work for whoever's listening.
Yes.
For whoever's listening.
For the record,
but
yes.
I think that in any kind of people services, there's always going to be opportunities where there's miscommunication, and how you approach that really speaks volumes to the client, and it creates this shoulder relaxing moment, and you see it in client calls. So they're not looking for, okay, well, where do the agency, like, what are they not telling us? Where are we not paying attention to? Because we're talking to them about it. And when you set those expectations, when you surface, any kind of tension or things that are, potentially going wrong, or things that are being missed, you then create that environment where the client feels like they can trust you. And ultimately, clients are not going to fire an agent. A good client won't fire an agency for bad performance. They're going to fire an agency when they feel like they can't deliver or get back to delivering on what they need them to deliver on. So we put so much effort early on to be very clear, set expectations, plot out the journey and the roadmap, and then stick to it. And it works phenomenally well. And I will say one more thing about that, which is it doesn't just create calm on the client side, it creates calm on the team side. And our team is able to deliver at a much higher quality because they also have their expectations set. So it just creates this ability to remove chaos. We're not manufacturing chaos. We're taking on the right clients. They can fit into our process. The timelines match up, and it sounds all kumbaya, which a lot of times it is, and obviously other times it isn't. But it really does set that stage and foundation for true, honest growth together.
You talk about setting expectations. That is so sage advice. Years ago, not today, but years ago, the traveling industry, the airline industry, had ratings, a third party, not so much an agency, but a travelers' rights group or whatever, did a survey, and every year they would do the survey on which is the number one airline in terms of satisfaction. For 10 years in a row, at least 10 years in a row, what airline came back with the most satisfied customers? Southwest.
Oh,
and I can imagine awesome. the folks in the boardroom at Delta and American and all the legacy carriers, United, probably went, they don't even serve meals. They throw nuts at you. They don't even have cool uniforms. They're wearing shorts and T-shirts. I mean, how can they be the number one satisfaction airline for more than a decade? Well, easy. They set the expectation rather low.
Low. There you
the
go.
Expectation was, we'll fly you from A to B on time. We'll give you some peanuts and a Coke.
Yeah.
and we probably won't kill you. That was the expectation. And, more times than any other airline, they exceeded the customer's expectation. On the other hand, the legacy carriers all, create this vision of absolutely,
luxury.
GQ exactly. Flight attendants and fashion flight attendants and excellent service. They tuck you in, they fluff up your pillow. And none of that is real. When you get on the airline, you realize that sometimes you get some of that, sometimes you don't. It's very hit and miss. And the expectation is low. Even though you arguably got more, you got a meal, you you had seat selection, you had all these things that Southwest didn't offer. But the full expectation wasn't met because they're sending grandiose expectations out. So it's a question of managing expectations. You're absolutely right.
What a powerful message. I love that.
Yeah, and it worked for them. Now, they blinked and now they're joining, the legacy carriers and all these things. But we're about out of time. I just have a couple more questions.
Sure.
For entrepreneurs listening or watching who may be overwhelmed by, the concept of growth and clients and staff and family and constant communication with the business, what is the one boundary they should consider setting now? How do they start?
So, yeah, I'll start by saying last Tuesday at 10 a.m., I crawled into bed in a ball because I didn't know what else to do. So I hear you and I feel you. I've been there. For me, the thing that made the largest impact and paying attention to the idea that psychologically, mentally, you need to be strong and healthy was paying very close attention to my physical health. And it was like this very weird thing that there was like this switch that flipped. When I was working a 9 to 5, I had plenty of time to go to the gym in the morning and take a walk in the morning and spend time taking care of myself, but I didn't. And then when I started my own business, I was going to the gym at 6:30 in the morning, which I could have done when I was in my 9 to 5, but the reasons were so different. It was I knew I had to take care of my body for myself to be mentally strong, and I knew I had to be mentally strong in order to go through the ups and downs. And I started to build these non-negotiables around it, and it like really all bled out from there, where I started to then create non-negotiables around family time and when I'm available. And again, that idea of like creating the confidence to tell clients, I'm sorry, I'm not available. It's just marketing. This is not, we're not doing surgery. We'll talk tomorrow. And I think that idea of really understanding what fills your cup is so important, and not to grind yourself into the ground, because it doesn't help anyone. It doesn't help you. It doesn't help your business. It doesn't help your family, your employees, your clients, your customers. You really do, as cliche and over repeated as it is, you really have to understand what does fill your cup and start there, because you cannot pour from an empty cup. So stop grinding yourself into the ground. Hustle culture doesn't last. Consistency over intensity every single day. But I think there's some looking internally to say, what does that mean for me? And if you don't do that, you don't really have a gauge of like where to start on those non-negotiables.
No, that's really good advice. When you were working for the agency, and maybe even before you were working for the other agency, how did you define success? And how do you define it now, today?
I'll give a very simple answer. I defined success when I was working for other people by how they, or by their approval. And now it's based on my approval of myself.
Wow, that's insightful. Yeah, very good. I've never, in the 90 whatever episodes I've done on this show, I've never had an entrepreneur with the same answer on both ends of the question. Right. They always have a higher elevated answer. If someone had said, how did you define it before? Money. How do you define it today?
Yeah.
Money. I would stop doing the show. I would think there's no sense that humanity is doomed and, all of that. But, I frequently
it's funny
get
because
way more elevated answers. Yeah.
I'll say very quickly, which is, of course, money drove me to do this, but I think entrepreneurship just completely changed me.
Yeah, it will. It will do that. Absolutely. Well, for my audience who would like to get more information on Steady Growth Partners, emphasis on steady growth, because I think we never actually got into this aspect of it. But let me just say this. I learned one of the many counterintuitive things I've learned in building a business is rapid uncontrolled growth is a luxury most small businesses can never afford. I thought the solution to every problem was grow, right? We're problem here, let's just grow higher. And that was totally the wrong answer because our problems grew exponentially, to our growth. And, now I learned the difference between growth and scale. But there are many companies that grow so fast, they actually have to go bankrupt. And they're profitable. And on paper, they're profitable, but they run out of cash, right? So I love the name of your company. I don't know if that was intentional for that purpose or not, but Steady Growth Partners. I think steady as she goes, as Captain Kirk would say.
Yeah.
Steady as
there
she
you go.
goes.
I mean, the truth is the name came out of just so many conversations I had with prospects where they came at it and said, we need, what are your goals? Growth now, fast, yesterday. And I just kept saying, like, you're not the right fit for us. Okay, so who is the right fit? Well, brands that that understand growth needs to be steady. And that's like really where it came from. If you want to check us out and learn a little bit more, you can check me out on LinkedIn. I'm sure, Mike, maybe you'll put a link to my LinkedIn in the show notes. You can check us out at our website, trysteadygrowth.com. And yeah,
yes, and all those URLs will be, if you're watching this on YouTube, audience, look down here, right down there, where it says see more, and all the URLs will be there for Ari's company, Steady Growth Partners. And if you're listening to this on your favorite podcast app, don't do it while you're driving because we don't want to lose subscribers that way anyway. When it's safe to do so, look at the podcast notes on your favorite podcast site or app, and that information will be there as well. Ari, what a great conversation. How many years has Steady Growth Partners been around?
3.5. We launched in January 2023.
Awesome. Well, you're past a crucial point. There's all these crucial points statistically, but congratulations on your journey so far. Keep it up. You have a lot of very impressive business strategies, and I can tell you just from my perspective, some of the stuff you're learning now took me, a decade or two to figure out. So you're a quicker study than I am. I think that will bode well for you and your company, and obviously your family and your clients. So I wish you continued success down this entrepreneurial road, and I hope our paths cross again.
Thank you, Mike. That was such a nice that was such a nice message and send off. I really appreciate the conversation. I appreciate being on the show, and I appreciate what you're doing. This really seems to be really necessary. So anyone that's out there listening and building a company, it's fine to curl up in a ball, but make sure you unfurl at some point and just keep going. You'll get there, man. You'll get there.
Absolutely. We agree on all of that. Thanks, Ari. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, here are some final thoughts. Ari's story is a reminder that growth is not automatically good just because the numbers are moving up. Growth without structure creates chaos. Growth without boundaries creates burnout. And growth without trust creates anxiety for clients, employees, and founders alike. What stands out about Ari's approach is that he seems to reject the idea that success requires constant availability. Instead, he makes the case for clarity, process, communication, and discipline. For entrepreneurs, that's an important lesson. You don't have to build a business that consumes every part of your life. You can build one that reflects your priorities, protects your values, and still delivers real results. That may not be the loudest version of entrepreneurship, but it may be one of the healthiest. Now, that's a wrap. Thanks for being part of our Reluctant Entrepreneur family. We've been very busy recording future episodes with fascinating guests, so be sure to subscribe to get notified when new episodes drop. If you're an entrepreneur or know someone who would make a great guest, we'd love to hear from you. Visit reluctantentrepreneur.podcast.com where you can apply or recommend a guest or just learn more about the show. And a couple of shameless plugs. I've started a new podcast series under the Reluctant Entrepreneur brand. The new series is called Reluctant Lessons, Where Businesses Went Wrong. On this series, we dig into high-profile business failures and the story behind it all. So far, we've profiled Rubbermaid, Kodak, Blockbuster, BlackBerry, and the DeLorean Motor Company, with many more to come. check those and other episodes out on this channel. And if you're interested in my book, The Reluctant Entrepreneur, Anatomy of a Business Startup from Uncertainty to Unstoppable, it's available in paperback and Kindle on Amazon and as an audiobook on both Audible and Amazon. And to everyone listening or watching, if you find yourself stepping into entrepreneurship, whether by choice or by circumstance, remember this: sometimes the path we never planned becomes the journey we were meant to take. Thank you all so much for being here. I truly appreciate every one of you, and I'll see you again soon.